Dante Attulo and Gail Glenzer live in the Chicago suburb of Orland Park, Illinois.
Dante and I first met at a nightclub about 10 years ago. I wanted to start a family, and he kind of wanted the same thing.
I was looking for the right woman, and I guess she was looking for the right guy, and we were just on track.
After 10 years together, they have a family of 4 children: Abby, Anthony, Riley, and JR.
I spend as much time as I can with the kids. Just sitting outside with them playing is enough for me.
Dante is a good father. He always playing with them. He's a hands-on dad.
But supporting the family isn't easy.
I actually have 2 jobs, construction in the day, and in the winter, I also do snow plowing.
Dante is definitely a workaholic. He just loves to work. I mean, I don't think he's taken a day off in the 10 years I've known him, so he does what he's got to do to provide for all of us.
It's a typical Tuesday morning in January. Dante is on a contracting job doing some carpentry.
I was working on a frame, holding an 8-pound nail gun, top of the ladder. This was a tool that I used a million times before.
1 hour into the workday, he inadvertently stands on a hose.
As I was coming down the ladder, the air hose tightened behind the ladder and jerked my arm towards my head. And the tool whacked me in the head. It rang my buzzer, but I'm used to getting little nicks and scratches. The job is tough. You hurt yourself here and there, but you just keep on going and get the job done.
Dante carries on with the work, but a few hours later, something hits him.
We had just finished lunch and noticed that I was starting to get a headache. I don't know if it was because I was tilted upside down somewhat. The pressure felt like my head wanted to explode, but just kept on doing what I needed to do.
Dante pushes through the pain for the rest of the shift and heads home.
When Dante walked in, he said he whacked himself in the head. And he said his head hurt. It looked like he had just a tiny gash. It didn't look like anything serious. So I took a tissue to kind of pat it off, and I noticed that it was still slightly bleeding. I was a little concerned by that. I did put some peroxide on it, and it didn't seem to, bubble up or anything. It looked good, and he said, just leave it, let it close up.
We wrapped it up with some gauze, put a bandage on there, and I went upstairs and went to sleep.
A few hours later, Dante wakes up and learns that a snowstorm is coming, but his head is still pounding.
I knew it was going to be a good 10, 12-hour snow push, and I was just going to have to deal with this headache because I wanted the money.
I told Dante I thought he should take the night off of work. He laughed at me. He said, no, I have to go make the money, because that's just who he is.
So Dante heads out for his second job, operating the plow.
As we were driving down the main street, about an hour into our shift, I started feeling dizzy. Felt like my head was like one of them little bobbleheads, bouncing back and forth. So I kind of straightened up, grabbed the steering wheel to collect myself. And I started seeing little spots everywhere, little white circles and spots and stars. Now I'm starting to think that something's going on. At that point, I couldn't drive anymore, so I had to pull over so my coworker Bob could take over driving.
Dante rides shotgun for the rest of the shift. After working all night, he finally returns home.
When he walked in the door, he looked probably the worst I've ever seen him after coming home from work. He was tired, he was crabby, he said his head still hurt him.
When I took my hat off, I noticed that it was sticking to the bandage. So Gail came over and noticed there was some pus on the bandage.
Seeing pus was a sign that there could be an infection. I was definitely growing more concerned with the thought of an infection. I said, are you sure you don't want to go get this checked out?
But I told her, nah, I really didn't want to waste time sitting in a waiting room. I just wanted to go to bed.
When his mother, Jerry, hears about the accident, she gives him a call.
I said, you hit yourself in the head? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what happened? He says, I'm sleeping. I said, I don't care if you're sleeping, wake up. I need to talk to you. What'd you do? Mom, I just got home from plowing. I'll call you back in a little while. And he hung up on me.
I decided to ignore her and just go to bed.
but he is unable to do so.
He sat down at the dining room table and he explained to me that he couldn't fall asleep. He did not look good to me at all. He was pale, a little greenish in color, and what really, really scared me was when he said he was nauseous. I thought for sure he had a concussion.
I could tell by the tone of Gail's voice that she was starting to get concerned. She thought that we should go to the clinic, and I thought going to the doctor at this point is probably a good idea.
Gail takes Dante to the clinic. There, the doctor notices something odd.
The doctor started to examine me, and the doctor was concerned because I had a bump, like a goose egg.
The bump is unusually large for an injury of this kind.
She was even concerned that I may have a skull fracture. So the doctor instructed me to go to the hospital to get a CAT scan of my head, but I just thought it was a waste of time.
Gail is having none of it.
Dante would have much rather have gone home and go to sleep. But I told him, I'm taking you to the hospital. I mean, he didn't have really a choice. I was driving, and that's where I was heading.
I knew that if I didn't go get this CAT scan, I would never hear the end of it. So I agreed and went peacefully.
Gail picks up the kids from school, leaving Dante at the hospital. There, doctors perform the CAT scan on Dante's head. 30 minutes later, the results are back.
The radiologist came out and called Atulo, come with me, so I got up and I followed him. I noticed the signs on the wall that we were heading towards the ER. I asked him, I said, what's going on? Because now I'm concerned. He said to me, he goes, dude, you're walking and talking, just come with me.
Neurosurgeon Dr. Leslie Schaefer takes on the case.
I was shocked when I first saw the scan. I knew that the potential for trouble for Dante was significant.
The doctor walked in and had a picture of my CAT scan and showed it to me.
The scan clearly showed that there was a nail in his brain.
And I looked at it and I started laughing. And I said, is this a joke? And the doctor said, this is no joke.
A 3 1/4-inch nail is embedded in Dante's brain. The nail head acts as an anchor in the skull itself. As the skin surrounding the injury swells, it hides the nail from view. But inside Dante's head, the shaft of the nail has pierced the brain, causing the organ to bleed and swell, resulting in his unrelenting headaches, dizziness, and spotty vision. Dante's family rushed to his bedside.
My heart stopped. I felt like, oh my God, my son has a nail in his brain. How is he gonna survive this? How would anybody survive this? And as a mother, all I kept thinking is, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my son. I'm gonna lose my son here.
I was panicking. I was in shock.
And Dante can hardly believe it either.
I was wondering how I was walking and talking and still alive.
It turns out Dante just got lucky.
This nail traversed right between the area that's responsible for movement and the area that's responsible for sensation. So the placement of the nail at that time really caused minimal weakness.
Had the nail passed slightly to the left or right, Dante would have been permanently disabled. But Dante isn't out of the woods yet.
The real risk to Dante was in removing the nail. Any manipulation of the nail where it sways forward and back, there was a chance that a hemorrhage would develop and he could sustain paralysis or even death from the hemorrhage.
And the chances of success are extremely low.
He only had a 5% chance of making it. That was what scared me most.
It hit me all at once. I wondered at that moment if I was gonna die.
He looked at me and he said, Mom, make sure my kids are okay. I was numb. I was numb. I just couldn't believe we were at this point and this is what was happening.
Dante Atulo has a 3 1/4-inch nail embedded in his brain. And now he must undergo a high-risk surgery to remove it. Dr. Leslie Schaefer takes Dante into the OR and begins the procedure.
One wrong move at that time could have left him paralyzed.
In the waiting room, time comes to a standstill.
Felt like a year. And I did a lot of staring out the window and a lot of praying.
I was more scared for my kids. If something happens to him and I now I have to take care of him and the kids. How was I going to be able to do that?
2 hours later, Dr. Schaefer comes out of the OR.
Surgeon walked right to me, and I'm sorry. Even this minute, he said, he's out of surgery, he's alert, he's talking, he's just fine. And I gave him a big hug, and I said, thank you.
The nail was removed without incident, and it floated out of the skull, almost as though it was a miracle.
A few hours later, he sees Gail in the ICU.
She asked me how I was doing, and I said I felt fine. Woohoo! I'm here still.
I did, you know, pretty much run up to him and give him a hug and a kiss, and the nurse kind of yelled at me a little bit.
But all Dante can think about is his work.
I looked out the window and noticed it was snowing, and I was just watching the money fall from the sky. And here I am, stuck in the hospital, and I can't do nothing about it.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
I knew from that point he was okay.
2 days after surgery, doctors release Dante from the hospital. And shortly after, he returns to his work as a contractor. But why did Dante never feel the nail in his brain?
Although the skull itself can sense pain, the brain lacks pain receptors. So it's not uncommon for victims of serious traumatic brain injuries to just feel a minor blow to the head, when actually, they've sustained a life-threatening injury.
Today, Dante lives a normal life.
At the moment, I have no lasting effects from the surgery. Every day I wake up feeling lucky.
It makes you, you know, kind of look at life a little bit differently. You should live for every day.
I could have lost my son, and he's still here. So every day that he's here is a blessing.